Greetings, Internet. My name is Chris. I'm gonna show you a build that I've been working on for a bit. It is a werewolf-centered build. I showed you a few duels not too long ago from this toon here, where I was using the werewolf and this type of setup. Now I've gotten one ability that I desperately needed for PvP, and that ability is Vigor. Because currently the only stamina heal other than Vigor is Rally, and I have it here on my bar. You can see it's not too great. It's about a tick every 1 second or 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds, which in PvP would be about 500 health every 2 seconds, which is not that great in my opinion. Vigor is a little bit better. Let's find it here. It's a little bit better because it does more healing. It's more of a burst heal and it can crit for a lot more. So even though by themselves the two heals are not that great, they work pretty well together. Plus you can see I just healed myself 16k with Rally. Yeah, you can use them pretty effectively together at least. Anyway, so I'm gonna show you this this setup I have, and I'm gonna explain some ways it works in PvE and some ways it works in PvP. Now first off, I'm in my PvP attire. So you can see I'm running 5 pieces of Hunding's Rage. I'm running 2 pieces of Molekina. I'm running 3 pieces of, well, both 3 and 2 pieces of Agility. You can see I have a necklace here, 2 axes, and then a 2-hand axe. And then I have 2 rings of 2-fang snake. I prefer this kind of setup, to be honest. It could be better if I had 2 master daggers, I guess. I kind of like the axes, even though the bleed is horrible. So, if you go on the dual wield, there's the passive called Twin Blade and Blunt. It says in the top, it says each axe equipped gives your weapon attacks a 50% chance to deal bleed 50% chance to bleed enemies for 2000 physical damage over 6 seconds. Now that's not very good. It's actually really bad. Even for PvE where the damage isn't reduced, it's really bad. So the bleed could definitely use like a buff compared to some of the other ones, like maces. If you have 1 mace, it allows you to ignore 10% of an enemy's physical resistance. 2, it's obviously 20%, which is quite a lot. If you have 2 swords, that's 5% increased damage. And daggers also give you crit, I think 5% crit per dagger, something like that. So you can see in this comparison the bleed from the axes is extremely bad. Plus the bleed doesn't work on every enemy and it can be purged in PvP. So yeah, people can purge your bleeds, which is, I think, kind of stupid. The 2-hander has something similar from the heavy weapons. You can see 2-handed axes deal 2000 physical damage, extra bleeding damage. No, that's weird. 2-hander axes deal 2000 physical damage. Why does it say damage twice? That's weird. That must be a spelling error or something. Yeah, a little less than 2000. You can see the dual wield is a bit better, I guess, because it bleeds for more. Actually, it depends on. That's funny. It depends on your weapon damage, I guess. But you know, the 2-hander has the same effect, and they're both really shitty, to be honest, compared to some of the other ones you can get from the weapons. Anyway, so the setup I use for PvE is basically like this. I have my dual wield bar, steel tornado, rendering slashes. I kind of like this ability, even though a lot of people don't use it, but it's a nice bleed, I think. Then I have Flying Blade. I rarely use this, so this could be whatever. If I really wanted a heal in PvE, I could slot Vigor here instead. That's what I do for PvP if I'm using dual wield. Then I have Evil Hunter. Even though the enemy isn't undead or Daedra, running Evil Hunter is still good, because just having it active can give you extra DPS. Then I have Repentance. For two reasons. First off, as you can see, it says while slotted you gain minor fortitude, endurance, and intellect, increasing health, stamina, and magicka recovery. So with this on, and this type of gear, I have 900 on this bar and under 800 on my other bar. So my recovery is pretty low in PvE. And then I have Werewolf transform in this bar, simply because it's what do you say? It does more damage on this bar because I have the let's see, the extra weapon damage from the agility set. And then on the other bar I have a two-hander. I pretty much just use all the abilities because I think all the two-hander abilities are really good. Like there's some of the trees for some of the weapons that are just really bad. Like for bow, I would never use all the abilities. I wouldn't use all the abilities for destruction or resto. But for some reason, two-hander, I just like all the abilities. First off, we have the critical charge. This one is extremely effective in some fights. You don't get to use it much in PvE, but in PvP it's extremely useful. The second ability is Carve. This one is very important, especially because we're running a werewolf setup. So you can see in the bottom it says you gain minor heroism, granting you an extra ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. And then our third ability, this is what you're going to be weaving with most of the time. And this is Wrecking Blow. So usually what I do, I'm gonna see if I can find a target to try it on. Maybe this guy down here. You could also see buffed. I have almost 4,000 weapon damage. So what I would do, light attack weave the Carve, and then heavy attack weave the uppercut. Very simple. Oh, this guy spawns mats. In case you're wondering, our AoE is simply just Steel Tornado. It is just extremely powerful and extremely effective. There you go. And then we end the fight with Repentance, just because it gives us pretty much all our resources back. It both heals you and gives you stamina, which is extremely nice. And I run this, I think I cut off before I finished, but yeah, I run this for two reasons. One, extra recovery, and two, a lot of healers don't use this ability, and it's very, very nice to have if you're a stamina build, because you can literally top yourself off pretty much every single fight. Alright, so after that we have our execute. This one I would just light weave with, which means you do a light attack first and then execute on top of it, and just keep doing that. And then rally, this is our buff, as you saw, brings us up to almost 4,000 weapon damage, which is pretty nice. And then we have our Werewolf Berserk ready. As you can see, it wasn't ready before, but now it is. I'm also going to show you what I would use for my bow setup. See, I just swapped out my two-handed with a bow. And I'm just using Wicked's Outfitter here. It still works a little bit. The macroing is bugged though. So you might have noticed here, when I go to my bow, I actually swap around which bar the werewolf is on. This is simply because you can see I'm on my bow, I have less weapon damage here than I have with my two-hander. And you can see I don't actually get the full effect of agility here, because I just have two pieces of both of them, which is a little bit of a shame, but I prefer this kind of setup, as I mentioned, because I could have 3 jewelry pieces of agility, but then all my weapons would literally have to be what's it called, master weapons with good traits. Otherwise it would not be as good. So that's the only way you can improve it. So for PvE, with the bow. I literally just use this setup. It's very rare that I actually swap to this, and I usually only do it if I have to go range for a fight. So if we're talking a fight like the last boss in Fungal Grotto or the last boss in Darkshade Cavern, that sort of stuff, where staying up close is extremely hard and you actually get more DPS just staying back with a bow. So the abilities I use is Venom Arrow. I like the Interrupt. This one is good for PvP too. I use bow a lot more in PvP than PvE. Bombard is nice. It's good damage and it snares everyone. Or actually, I guess it's called Immobilize. Yeah, Immobilize. And then Focused Aim, Evil Hunter again, and then Repentance again, and then we just swap the Dawnbreaker around. So you can see I have the Flawless Dawnbreaker. I forgot to mention this. On this one, it's on my bow bar because this is the one I would use if I swap to a bow. If I go to my dual wield two-hander setup, it's on my two-hander setup because this is the one I weave with and whatever. Or yeah, this is one I usually stay on the most. So it sort of depends on what kind of setup you're running there. Alright, so now we get to the cool part, the actual werewolf form itself. Let's see, let's find it here. It's under World, Werewolf. So I chose the Werewolf Berserker for obvious reasons. This one basically just makes your bleeds a lot more effective. You can see your light attacks add a bleeding effect, dealing 11,000 physical damage over 8 seconds, plus an additional 40%. The extra 40% comes from choosing this. So that means, let's see, 11 times... That means you actually get almost 16,000 physical damage as a bleed. And trust me when I say this, when you're in your werewolf form, the most part of your, like the second most part of your DPS will come from bleeds. I am not kidding you, it's so strong. But there will be times when you fight against enemies that cannot be bled. And this is when you're fighting certain types of Atronachs. I think that the fire Atronachs, sometimes they can be bled and sometimes they can't. Frost Atronachs cannot. Stone Atronachs cannot. Flesh Atronachs, I think, can be bled. And then Skeleton Colossus, or Colossi, cannot be bled, stuff like that. So for my abilities, I run Feral Pounce, Hircine's Rage, Ferocious Roar, Howl of Agony, and Claws of Anguish, or Anguish. Angus, yeah, Claws of Angus, right. Anguish. I have all the passives here. Even though I only use one of my actual class abilities, I have all the passives, just because. I have all the passives and everything, pretty much. I still need to level the bow a little bit more. Yeah, and I can also show you here. I don't actually have the full Undaunted stuff yet. So let's go back to this. I want to show you why. Alright, so Feral Pounce, for example. A lot of people will use the other morph, because that one's AoE, and you think, oh, well, it's pretty good. But the problem with that one is, it takes a damage and halves it. So, half the damage will hit the target you're jumping at. The other half of the damage will hit everyone else. So, it would do 4,000 damage to the target you hit, and then 4,000 damage to everyone around the target. Now, I much prefer this one, where it does the full damage to just one target, plus this one, as you level it up, will increase the amount of time you're in the werewolf form. At rank 1, it's 1 second. Rank 2, it's 2 seconds. Then 3, and then it ends at 4, I think. Second up, we have Hircine's Rage. The reason why I use Hircine's Rage is simply because it increases your weapon damage by 10%. 10% is a lot. So, let's say I buff up with my weapon damage here, with my rally. I have 3.4, or 3.8. 10% is almost 400 extra. So that would take me well over 2,000, or 4,000, I mean. God. I'm stumbling over my words here. Alright, so this one here, I use Ferocious Roar. I used to use the other one, which is why you can see some of them are fully leveled and some are not. I actually like this one better because there's a insanely good combo you can do where you use the roar, which fears someone, and then you use Howl of Agony. This morph means that it does 30% increased damage to the target you hit if they're feared. So if you use these two in connection, it means you fear them, you hit them for a shit ton of damage, usually 20k crit, 30k crit on non-player characters, and about 10 to 13 crit on players. And then if you kill them, it means that enemies nearby are disoriented and set off balance, which means you can heavy attack them, you can leap to them, whatever, and it will knock them down on their ass. And then lastly we have Claws of Anguish. I started off with the Claws of Life, which heal you, but I don't like that one. And I think this one is a lot better because it gives the target major defile, which means it reduces their healing done by 30%. Alright, lastly, before I start showing you clips, there are different sets you can use. I'm just going to show you the different sets I use. For PvP, this is the setup I would use. Let's see, PvP bow here. Boop. Alright, so I have just a mix match of shitty traded shieldbreaker items, simply because I just wanted the set. I didn't really care about the traits. So I have shieldbreaker. A lot of people really don't like this set, but I think it's not as powerful as some people say. It is certainly good against people with shields, simply because a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. But it's not game breaking at all, in my opinion. And I use this with a bow because with any other weapon it's usually a waste. It's good with a bow and it's shit with everything else, pretty much. So yeah, and you can see the stat line is pretty good too: stamina, recovery, and weapon damage, which puts me at about 1,000 recovery on both my bars here for PvP, which is very nice. Something I've started using as well in PvP, I haven't actually used in PvE yet, is this set. You probably don't recognize the set because it doesn't look like anything special, but it's a set called Jack of Salvation. Actually, Savior's Hide is the set name. And what this does, as you can see, is reduces the cost of werewolf transformation by 33%. So if I go into werewolf here, you can see it costs 189, but that's simply because I have let's see if we can find it here. I have Restoring Spirit, which reduces the cost of ultimates by 4%. But yeah, let's see. So it costs 189 right here with this set on. If I swap to a different set, all of a sudden it costs 289 or 288. So this set is extremely nice if I just want to go on a werewolf spree, because it's not always you're gonna get your full effect out of the shieldbreaker. Like maybe you're fighting a lot of players, but most of them are not even running shields. Then it's a waste running shieldbreaker. So I much prefer running this set sometimes. The nice thing about shieldbreaker is the fact that the light and heavy attacks proc to do damage through a shield also works with the werewolf form, so that's pretty good. The stat line for the Jack of Salvation is pretty decent: stamina, recovery, and stamina. And you can see again I'm above 1,000 stamina, which I kind of like. Actually, I think we're gonna swap to this one. I'm just gonna quickly show you how I would usually play this kind of playstyle. So let's say you're in a boss fight. Yeah, I'm spamming apparently. Say you're in a boss fight, this is just what I would do. I would put Rally on, Evil Hunter, pop the form, use the Hersine's Rage, and then just light attack to trigger the Molakina. There you go, you can see. That was 24k DPS over a very short amount of time. I will show you some actual examples where where I get proper DPS in a proper setting instead of just this open field stuff. As you can see here, my Howl of Agony actually was the top. Usually in a longer fight, your light attack will be number one, dealing the number one dealing attack, or damage dealing attack, and then bleed would be second, and then Howl usually third. Alright, so I talked about how some enemies cannot be bled, and this is simply because they're resistant to it, or how do you say, they're immune to it. So I'm just gonna want to try this out actually. I haven't done one of these solo in a while. I think this one ends with a boss or something. You can see here, the one problem I keep finding in both PvE and PvP is the fact that since the heal is magicka cost, I usually can't heal that often, which is a little bit annoying. But yeah, since some enemies can be bled, what that means is you just have to change the ability rotation. So here, for example, I would focus a lot more on using the Howl, because you see, this guy cannot be bled. This guy is actually an air Atronach. I forgot to mention these also exist. So what I would do here is focus a lot more on getting the Howl off, because the Howl still does a lot of damage, even if you can't fear the target. Oh, we're getting some ads here. Oh, that's bad, and my form just wore off. Oh well. So let's show you damage here. Howl of Agony, again, is the top. Light attack, second, and then bleed. And then it says heavy attack werewolf. It's just named weirdly. That's mostly because of that last fight. It's just 4 hits, you can see, but the heavy attack does hit quite hard. But yeah, so I'm gonna cut over and show you some different clips of both PvE boss fights and PvP fights. Alright, so for these next clips here, we're looking at some PvE footage from, I think, Cryptoheart's Banished Cells. You can see this boss here is a good example of someone that's immune to bleeding, as you can see on the left side of the screen. It just keeps showing up in red saying immune, bleeding. I still get quite a good DPS on him. I think it ends with 17 or 18k, which is pretty decent. This next boss is normal Banished Cells, by the way. This one can be bled, and you can also see my claws are hitting multiple targets, so I get a very big number here. Plus, I think they have less resistance on normal. So I think I end that boss with like 32k DPS. And of course there's a few ads left and such. Something that's good to note here is that if you're rooted, you cannot use your leap. A little bit of a shame. So you have to dodge roll out of roots just like everybody else. Here's the last boss of the normal Banished Cells. So this one here, you might notice after a while which kind of skill rotation is better for enemies that can be bled. But for this one here, I should use way more light attacks. You can see I'm actually using more more howls than light attacks. But the light attacks will give you higher DPS if you use them more, because light attacks plus bleed does a lot of damage to targets that can be bled. Here I'm the only DPS on Ibelgast, while the 2 other people in the group are taking out the ads here. And just watch this. I mean, I'm just light attacking using a howl once in a while. And you can just see how fast his health is dropping. He has, I think, about 600k, and I'm doing about 20k DPS, a little bit more every second. This one here, this is the last clip of the PvE stuff. This is just like a burn test to see if we could kill this boss before she pulls us in. and you'd see we actually get pulled in, but she dies while we get pulled in. I think there's 25k DPS. It's not too bad. Here's a little bit of PvP. I just took a few different clips. One of the clips I will be including in an upcoming video I'm making. Cause you know me, I love making montages, even if I don't do it very often. Okay, so watch this. This guy here, I shit you not, I get 11k DPS on him. I can't even explain that. Here we get a guy off his horse. You get some friends to back him up here. But watch this, we get a fear off. Right there. 2 howls, that guy's dead. You can see one of them hit him for 13.3. I mean, the time to kill with werewolf is just amazingly fast. But some people are very hard to kill. Alright, so for the last part here, I'm looking at 3 sets on the PTS. The first one is the Essence Thief. And I'm looking at sets that would benefit from werewolf, or when werewolf would benefit from it. See, here it goes off, it spawns this little circle on the ground. You just have to walk into it to pick it up, which that gives you extra damage, and it heals you and gives you stamina, I think. The next set I'm trying out is more golden. This spawns a weapon when you do light attacks. You can see it's floating there in the air. The weapon is a little bit weird with the FTC, because it shows up as 2 attacks, light attack and cleave. So cleave hits multiple enemies and light attacks hits 2 enemies, I think. At least that's what it's showing. If you just look to the left, you can hopefully see it. Light attack, light attack, light attack. Should say cleave somewhere. Cleave, yeah, hit 11. I don't know if this set is any good. I didn't really like the Essence Thief. I'm hoping they'll buff this more golden set a little bit. It is kind of nice though. And last one is the Briarheart. I really like this set actually. And you can see here I'm just triggering it off of heals, because it's triggered off of crits. And you can also see just how it heals me whenever I crit. So that's a nice set too. Anyway, thanks for watching.